Everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, especially to be in a panel where I'm sitting with three colleagues, three friends. I don't know whether Colin made the right choice in giving me the first chance, because politicians never give back a mic once they get it. So I would first like to ask how much time I have.
For this whole session, we have only half an hour. So
Right.
maybe 5 minutes, not much more.
All right. Okay. Just 5 minutes.
5-10 minutes.
Okay. Well, coming from Alim's presentation also, there are a few key points. In this whole panel, we were talking about the role of the UN in capacity building, and also the role of and how the UN can help, and what are the challenges. Well, in trying to address these issues, do we have? No. Yeah. Okay. Can I stand up?
Yes, of course.
Take me back.
Take the mic.
Yeah. This way we can do it faster, I think. So there have been a number of evaluation organizations and associations in the past couple of years which have expanded. In 1997, there was something like 6. Now there's over 100. And in a sense, we need to see how value addition has been created by these networks to evaluation. And most of these evaluation organizations are engaged in evaluation capacity development at different levels. But what is really capacity? Capacity is defined by the UN as the ability to define and realize goals, or the ability to perform and implement. I have a little story to illustrate the point, but with the 5 minutes I've got, the story will take, you mind?
No, please.
Okay, I'll go fast. You know, when you talk about capacity can be, it has its definitions, right? But capacity development is something like, you know, its progress is made one step at a time. It's very slow, and teams do it better than individuals, and leadership is very important, and it's about continuous improvement. So I would like to compare capacity development to the moose story. I don't know how many of you all have heard the moose story. So it's about these three friends, three hunters who fly to Alaska to go moose hunting, and they charter a float plane to visit a lake which they had visited a previous year and a previous year. So when they go to this particular place, and the pilot drops them off at the edge of the lake with all their gear and says he will come back in 3 days to pick them up. And in 3 days later, the pilot comes back to pick them up. And they're all ready, and the men load their gear, and then they strap a moose onto the pontoon, and then the pilot says, okay, now we're ready, let's get back. And they say, are you crazy? We've shot 3 moose, we've just loaded 1, we have 2 more moose to load. The pilot says, are you crazy? How am I going to take 3 moose in this plane? It's definitely not going to take off, it's too heavy. And then the men start arguing, and there's a long discussion, and one of the men says, well, last year we were here, and it was the same 3 guys, the same gear, and the same plane, and the same lake, the same weather, and the same 3 moose we took last time. The only difference is the pilot. So why can't you take the 3 moose this time? So finally the pilot says, okay, right, I'm convinced, let's load the 3 moose on the plane. So they strap up the moose, 3 mooses on the plane, and they then push the plane into the edge of the lake, and then the pilot revs it up as hard as he can and starts taking off. And then the plane quietly takes off from the lake, and as it takes off, it just goes over and hits the branches, on the top branches, and the plane goes crashing down. And then everything's strewn all over, the gear is all over, the moose is thrown all over, the men are all over. And then after some time, there's a noise, and one of the guys, Bill, shouts out, hey Tom, where are you? Where are you? And after a little while, Tom from another corner somewhere shouts back, I'm okay, I'm over here. What's the situation? Bill says, well, we are better off than last time. We are 50 feet further away than last time. Right? So that's progress. The last time the plane crashed anyway. But now this time they've got 50 feet ahead. So that's capacity building in a sense. It doesn't work so easily, but you need to take time. So the roles and relationships of evaluation organizations with evaluation capacity. Yes, there's a very close relationship. A lot of people say that the amount of evaluation associations or evaluation networks that exist in countries definitely support evaluation capacity building or capacity development. But how much? Is it only that? Is it the number of evaluation networks or WOPES organizations that exist, or are there other things? I believe that there are other things. There are many more ingredients that should be there to support it. Quesnel spoke about 3 conditions for strengthening evaluation capacity development. One is awareness and appreciation at the government decision-making levels of the importance and necessity of evaluation. Alim was saying something the same. That's creating the demand for evaluation. That's very important. The second thing is institutionalization of various evaluation functions in the government machinery at national, sectoral, program, project levels. And finally, development of human and financial resources to have a professional cadre of evaluators. So basically, there are these 3 conditions which Quesnel says is important for evaluation capacity development. But what more do we need? Here, what is important in my view is that there are some other issues. Now, even though the UN has been, what is the role the UN can play? I will give you something. 1 is supporting the evaluation associations. 2 is to help strengthen the enabling environment in countries. And 3 is supporting the creation of parliamentary forums across regions. This is something new, because that's something I saw when Alim also spoke about the evaluation policy and about the right enabling environment. There's one thing that is lacking: political leadership, political buy-in. I'm not talking about government, separate the two, right? It's about politicians. How much do you have politicians getting engaged in evaluation? I am here because it's the exception than the rule. You wouldn't have many parliamentarians coming, but we did it. We did it in South Asia, we did it in Africa. 2 weeks ago, Colin was there, and we're trying to change that concept. Yeah. So I'll give you one example where the UN was really useful in helping us. In Sri Lanka, we had this TESA, Teaching Evaluation in South Asia. We initiated in Sri Lanka with the participation of all South Asian countries. And the purpose was to bridge a gap in academic training capacity in universities, and the outcome was professionals in development and students seeking a career in evaluation. And we would have a student graduating from the diploma course having minimum evaluation competencies. And the strategy was to establish a consortium of academic institutions for teaching evaluation in academic institutions. And we built up a connection with some of the universities in the USA. And the collaboration, which was important, the collaboration was the project was initiated by UNICEF, and the UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia helped us, and it was then sponsored by IDRC from then onwards. So basically, this has become a very important project for not only Sri Lanka, for South Asia, but there was a very proactive role played by the UN, and it was very important that they did play this role. But, okay, that's about having institutions supporting capacity development. But what are the challenges? One of the key challenges I see is identifying political champions and lobby parliamentarians across the world to institutionalize monitoring and evaluation, because this really creates the demand. Here, what the UN could do or should do is a lot more work. Because if you look at, there are so many examples. I would take an example from India. There are 2 particular states, the Kerala state, where Uma Chandi is the chief minister and has been exemplary in using monitoring and evaluation, follows it very strongly, and it has been adapted across the state. Same way in Kashmir, Omar Abdullah has been one of the strong followers of MNE. Now, when there are political champions leading it, you find that it gets established. You might be able to go and install it. You might have MNE installed in departments, in government departments or ministries. But if there is no political leadership, it's not used. So how do you bring politicians in? That part, I suppose we will discuss this further in the afternoon session about how we could do it. because it's not difficult. We've seen that it can be done and it can work. That's what the Parliamentary Forum for Development Evaluation is trying to do. And I think that the UN has a huge role in that part. And then, of course, as a result of that, supporting the establishment of the Parliamentary Forum for Development Evaluation regionally and to work to establish national evaluation policies in all countries. There was a good question about whether there was a readiness assessment for the national evaluation policy. How do you see, if you look at it the other way, how do you get a country ready? Because if they're not interested, right? What happens that if you do have a national evaluation in a policy in place, whether the other things will then fall in line? Because we did a mapping exercise. The Parliamentary Forum for Development Evaluation did a mapping exercise. And you'll be surprised, there's only around 20 countries globally which have a national evaluation policy. So you can imagine most of the developed countries don't have a national evaluation policy. It's important that if you have a national evaluation policy, it becomes mandatory for governments to set aside funds for monitoring and evaluation, to be able to have the necessary legislation for monitoring and evaluation, to make it mandatory that performance budgeting is done. So then you ensure that things happen the way you want, rather than wait till everybody is ready, because it will never happen, because politicians are allergic to monitoring and evaluation because they don't understand it most of the time. So that's what I would like to say at this point mainly. And I would look at this way. If you look at this diagram, evaluation capacity building, so you look at governments, you have the UN, the donors, the civil society, the WOPES, and what you never had before, parliaments and policymakers. You bring them into the picture, then you might have a complete scenario. Thank you.